I love this title. Killer Kids, not the typical boy next door. Dun, 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 dun. Isn't that good?
Maybe I'll throw some deep, thought-provoking, scary music in. We'll see what happens on the edits.
And I think at the end you should get on like Jerry Springer does at the end of every episode and says, remember everyone, love one another. And we can close out that way from now on.
That always helps. Yeah, just love the kid. He won't kill anyone. Yeah, you wish.
Anyway, do you watch Springer?
I used to watch Springer.
I'm not surprised.
Yeah, not anymore.
This is Inside the Line, by the way. Inside the Line, real stories by real cops. You can catch us at insidetheline.org, or you can email us at realstoriesbyrealcops@gmail.com. Please share us. I'm Dave, sitting across from Dale, and we're going to be talking about killer kids, and we're going to start, like any good news program, we're going to start with a misleading statistic, which is the United States as a whole. In the United States as a whole, 74 children per year are homicide perpetrators, which means they're killers.
Mean, bloodthirsty killers. That's very misleading because the study that I read is they're talking more like 12 and 13-year-old kids. We're not talking about the kids in Chicago, the 16-year-old kids who are shooting 10 kids on a weekend. We're talking the really rare 13 and 12-year-old kid where you ask the question, what has gone so bad in that kid's life that at 13 years old, he has to kill someone?
I could tell you one of them. I could tell you one. Well, I'll tell you two. My first thing is kids don't see consequence. It's something that develops as the brain develops. I know there's a whole argument that some people are making that kids who kill before age 25, the brain hasn't fully developed.
Let them all out.
Well, how could you sentence somebody to death? They don't have a full understanding of the consequences of their action. I think you just could, but that's me. But I've heard that expressed as a theory. But I think that's probably a 12, 13-year-old kid. You know how it is. You're 16, your girlfriend dumps you think it's the end of the world, or your boyfriend dumps you think it's the end of the world. It's terrible. And,
So you stalk them, and when they get out of work, you shoot them, you stab them, you kidnap them, and dump them in the lake.
Maybe you did. But for most of us, the next week, you've got another girlfriend. She's going to be the blah, 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 the world. Da, 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 you're in love again. And, how many kids go through that cycle when they're kids, when they're dating? And meanwhile, they're doing terrible things to each other. And this is normal. I'm talking about, again, teenagers and normal are probably, you should take these two words and put them as far apart from each other as possible. But, you look at teenage relationships and you look at the normal day-to-day terrible things that teenage boys and teenage girls do to each other. And it kind of makes sense that in some outlier cases, you would have teenagers and in a case of a 12 or 10-year-old preteen kids who act impulsively and sometimes violently, and sometimes with horrible, horrible consequences.
And that's why this subject matter, killer kids, it's so intriguing because what could be going on in their mind at that age to go out and kill? And you just don't understand that. But let me say something, Dave.
Yep.
I can understand you going on a rampage.
63-year-old
broke down comic.
Listen, I'm ready. I was hoping for COVID. I was hoping things would happen for me with COVID. Not enough of the right people died.
Yeah.
All the wrong people died from COVID. Anybody that I know of who died from COVID, I feel badly for them because they were okay people. I had a list. I was like, and every day I woke up during the whole COVID pandemic saying,
that person's still alive.
I hope that person dies. I hope that person dies. I don't want this person to die because she owes me $20,000.
There you go. Another stat is they're mostly boys.
Yeah, that's not surprising.
Yeah,
that's true with most violent, right? Most violence at juvie level.
Yeah, most violent crimes, violent street crimes, domestic crimes, it's usually males. You're talking 90% male is the perpetrator in those type of situations. So absolutely.
But it's climbing, right? More girls are getting involved with this stuff?
Well, I mean, it kind of goes in spurts. It's trendy. In different parts of the country may happen that way, but I wouldn't say more girls are becoming any less evil than they already are, Dave, or more evil than they already are.
Well, they're different. It's a different kind of evil. Boys bully with their fists. Girls bully with words.
Absolutely, yep.
And actions. And
they'll take your money. Or they'll go off the pill, Dave, and you impregnate a girl when you're 18 and you got a couple of kids out there.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Very evil.
Yes, they are very evil. Those teenagers, they're the worst. All All right, so we're going to look at the categories of
Yeah,
murder.
we got categories. I'm going to go over the
I
categories.
love the way you break these down. Now, are these the way cops break these down, or is these the way you broke them down for the sake of the show?
I did my research.
Podcast.
Before any good podcast, you would hope that the podcast host does research so they can articulate on a certain subject matter. So I went out on the internet, and I used to be a juvenile officer, so I kind of had an idea anyway.
Yeah, before that you were a juvenile.
And before that, I was a juvenile delinquent. So I came up with this about
By the
8
way,
or 9.
I should ask you this: were you a juvenile delinquent?
Absolutely.
Were you known to police?
Was I known to police? I was pretty elusive in my day.
Okay.
I was known to have stolen many a moped,
Okay,
stolen a few cars, really good at shoplifting. I was a very good shoplifter.
really?
Absolutely.
Like a very good like what kind of stuff?
Like clothes, back in the day, cassettes, CDs,
Okay.
television sets, whatever you needed, Dave.
So here's a good question.
What?
This is a good question. Why did you not follow that path when you became an adult?
Sometimes you just look in the mirror and you say, what a nitwit you are. And that's
Yeah.
what I did. I said, what a nitwit. You got to go in the Marine Corps, dude.
Okay. All right. So you know why? You know why you did that?
Because I have a conscience.
Because your brain was developing.
Yeah.
Your brain was developing, and it developed a conscience, and you realized these things are wrong. I shouldn't do them. And so you straightened out.
I said, I can be evil. I can just go in the military, go in the Marine Corps, and then the U.S. government's going to cover me all the way.
You know something?
I'm covered.
If you had been a little less, if your brain had developed a little bit less and you had gone into the Marine Corps anyway, you might have taken that shot at Putin years ago.
I might have taken out Putin years
Yeah.
ago. Absolutely. 1987.
Instead, you thought about consequences.
Consequences.
All right.
All right. So we got the categories are impulsive shooting.
I like the way you read that. It was like it's a game show. And the categories are.
Well, the categories that we're going to discuss are impulsive shooting during play, maybe accidental, a group assault, random murder, killing an adult or killing a family member.
Oh, this is my other theory, by the way.
What's that?
Some adults deserve to die.
Yeah, give me an example, Dave.
You'd bleep it out. I know you'd
right.
edit it out so he wouldn't get sued. But yeah, I will give you an example. I'll give you a perfect example. I don't know if it's true, but I mean, I know the allegation. I've read the allegation. William Loeb, the late former publisher of the Manchester Union Leader, now called the New Hampshire Union Leader. The Manchester Union Leader at one time was a very influential newspaper, Republican politics in New Hampshire, where the very first presidential primaries held, and therefore, for conservatives, it held a lot of sway. And he was very powerful and very, very wealthy. And his stepdaughter just recently accused him of molesting her when she was a single-digit little girl. I don't know if it's 7, 8, 6, something like that. And according to the stepdaughter, who's now in her 70s, he did the same with his biological daughter. So I would say pedophiles, by and large, are one group. If you've been sexually molested by somebody and you were to respond by doing them harm up to murdering them, I would say, I'm not saying we would excuse it in our system of laws, but you'd say, you
You might look the other way a little bit.
yeah.
Why don't you kick that body over to the other side of the street?
Well, you can at least understand the motivation for a kid. Or if you've got a father who beats his kid or beats the kid's mother, something like that, and the kid acts to stop him, and that's the only way to stop him.
The ones we're going to talk about are all ones that I, as a former law enforcement professional, Dave, was either involved with or they happened in the community where I used to work. So I have intimate knowledge, whether I was there or just speaking to officers or detectives that were there.
Okay.
We have intimate knowledge on a lot of these crimes.
What's the fifth category?
Robbery. That's a huge category. It happens every day. We really couldn't even nail that one down. We'll get into that last because that is just so common. People getting robbed for no reason and getting shot, stabbed, or whatever the
I
situation.
know why they get robbed. I know why they get robbed. Somebody wants their money.
Well, they want their money,
Somebody
but
wants their stuff.
just give your money and let them go. You don't got to shoot them in the head.
You know something, people. Yeah, you just say that, but that is kind of all right. We'll hit them one by one.
All right.
Let's go to the first one: impulsive shooting.
This was a few years ago, and this hit the papers. This kid was arrested. He was charged, and he did 3.5 years in the House of Correction system in Massachusetts. His name is Justice Galarza, and what he was doing, he had a gun. He racked around in the chamber. He pulled back the slide. It was a round in the chamber. He dropped the magazine, and he thought if you don't have a magazine in the gun, that the gun won't shoot.
So the magazine is out of the gun, but the bullet's in the chamber already.
Bullets in the chamber.
Ooh, so
and
you
in
got
some guns, not all guns, in some guns, that gun will still operate. So he pointed the gun at the kid, jokingly or accidentally or whatever the case may be, and he shot him and he killed him. He didn't necessarily die where he lay, but he died at the Beverly Hospital, which was a mile from the scene. But let's give a little background about this.
Sure.
First of all, when the officers responded to that scene, the people involved, to include Justice Galarza.
Yeah, I remember this case now.
Actually, I think Justice Galarza had fled the scene, but the people involved, like some of the witnesses, it was a bunch of domestic violence victims who were relocated from the Worcester, Mass area, and they were in a halfway house in the city of Beverly, Massachusetts. They tried to cover up the scene. They said that it happened outside in a park, but the officers on scene, very experienced, seasoned street officers, kind of concluded that, no, that didn't happen because they went to the park and there was no sign of anything. And in the house, what do you think they found? A shell casing.
Yeah.
Under the bed or somewhere in the room where it happened. So that unraveled real quickly. Moments after that, police cruiser stopped a motor vehicle, probably a quarter mile from the scene, and the gunshot victim was in the back seat of the car. They were trying to take him to the hospital. So what happened was they called the ambulance, and then the ambulance transported a person who subsequently died. His name was Christian Merced out of Florida, and he died at the hospital. So that whole situation kind of unraveled in that the family was very adamant that the police should have just allowed the people to drive the victim to the hospital because the delay of the cops stopping and then the ambulance coming contributed to his death, which wasn't the case. He died of a fatal gunshot wound to the heart.
Right.
So there probably was no saving him regardless of when he had gotten there. Mm-hmm. So that was a situation where, they're trying to blame the cops when in fact they should have blamed the kid. The kid eventually turned himself in at a neighboring police department sometime later. And then subsequently he went to trial and he pled guilty to manslaughter and did 3.5 years. Funny story, not a funny story, but a little backstory.
So go ahead.
I know the family. My younger brother was a break dancer with Justice Galarza's father, who died a few years prior to that of a heroin overdose. But I was at the Stop and Shop. I don't know if they have Stop and Shops around the country, whoever's listening to us, but on the East Coast, Stop and Shop is a grocery store. I stopped there one day with my son. He wanted some ice cream. I pulled up. I see this kid, Justice Galarza. This is a week before it happened. And I know the kid, very evil looking kid. So I hesitated. I told my son, I said, you see that kid right there sitting on the bench? Be careful. He's a violent kid. And he kind of shrugged me off. And I saw this kid kind of eyeballing my son. So I parked my car and I went in with my son just because I had that feeling about this kid. Because I know him. I know him to be kind of a thug and a punk. So a week later, he shoots someone and he kind of gets off because he explains it as it was an accident.
Right. And nobody's there to.
Well, the victim is dead. Yeah. The other nitwits in the apartment are all criminals, ex-criminals. They're very untrustworthy. They were a part of a few people who were trying to cover it up or kind of tamper with the evidence or kind of set the cops in a different direction. Yeah. Unfortunately or fortunately for the citizens of Beverly, they had some great police officers on scene that day. Yeah. The detectives, the patrolmen.
And you see it on cop shows all the time where somebody gives them a story and you're like, all right, that's a story. It seems plausible. And then the cop can read things and ask a few more questions and looks around a little bit more. And in this case, they did, and they found the bullet, which obviously the spent shell casing.
Yeah,
that changes the whole story.
You shoot a gun, unless you carry the shell casing in with you and then drop it somewhere, which people have done, but it just didn't work out that way.
Yeah.
Rule of thumb, Dave. Don't trust criminals. That's just a basic rule of thumb.
That's a rule of thumb?
Yeah, pretty much.
Maybe this is what I've been doing wrong. All right, so this kid was Justice Galarza. How old was he at the time?
Like 17. He's out now.
Yeah.
He's out. He's roaming the streets, baby. So if you live in the North Shore of Massachusetts, lock your doors.
You think he's here? You think he's back to living around?
He might be. Yeah. Hopefully he doesn't listen to this podcast. He might identify us.
I know. You. He won't identify me. I just want to say that, anyway, I don't know, 3.2. What do you think? You think it's not plausible that he was screwing around and he just shot his friend and it was an accident?
It could have been.
but it could go either way.
Yeah, it can go either way.
It could go either
Absolutely
way.
can go either way.
So he admitted to the lesser offense.
Absolutely. You might not have had any evidence to prove the intent of murder. In the court system, if you know you can't prove murder and the defendant will admit to a lesser charge, then the court system has no other reason other than to say, all right, we're going to have to take the lesser charge and go with that. Whether they believe or not, this is his story. They can't prove his story.
And it could be plausible. I mean, I'm thinking here are the things that I could see as plausible explanations for this. One, thought the gun was empty, fooling around. Stupid, but probably wouldn't deserve a murder charge. Number two, trying to scare somebody, as kids do, didn't realize the gun was loaded. This is why they take gun safety classes.
Absolutely. Well, criminals don't take gun safety classes.
I know. It's amazing. It's amazing. Responsible gun owners.
Yeah.
Responsible gun owners.
You'll never find out. The only one who probably really knows is the kid Justice himself and the victim right before he died.
Yeah.
So we got another one. Same neighborhood, Dave.
Same neighborhood.
Same city, same neighborhood.
This
is a bad one. This is he was a 26-year-old male from the Beverly, Massachusetts area. His name was J.P. Venazaro. He was in contact with a younger girl, and they were having some conversations back and forth, whether he was arguing with her, whether he was threatening her, whatever the case was. This girl's current boyfriend and his friend told the victim, Venazaro, hey, meet us at Balch Playground, and we'll have a fight or we'll discuss it, whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
So this kid, he was a large kid. The victim, very big, like 300 pound. And I knew him when I worked in the high school. So he meets these kids at like 9 o'clock at night. Rule of thumb, Dave, if someone says to you, meet me for a fight at a park and it's 9 o'clock at night, pitch dark, would you go?
I wouldn't go if it was at 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yeah, I wouldn't go if it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon either. But that right there was the worst thing that you could have done.
Yeah.
Fight someone in the dark. Because when he showed up, these two kids, and they were 16-year-old kids, they were from a local halfway house / detention center, which that program subsequently closed down because it was a horror show of misfits.
Okay.
And one of the kids had a bat, started hitting him with a bat. He fell to the ground, and the other kid jumped on him. And the people that were there, because there were other people there who weren't charged, they just were there to watch a fight. They thought he was punching him in the back. But when in fact he stabbed him 5 times, to include once in the heart, in which he died.
Oh.
All over a young girl, antagonizing a situation that he may or may not have said something to them. You can't believe criminals. You never can. You're never going to get the whole story there.
Right. And there's no record. There was no record of the conversations, or there's no text and nothing like that.
I don't believe there was. I don't believe there was any text messages. It was just he said, she said, let's meet for a fight. And they ambushed the kid.
So was it 1 against what? 1 against 2? 1 against 5?
It was 2 against 1.
It was 2 against 1.
But the thing about it was, this kid was a massive kid.
Yeah.
And these 2 other kids were 16 and 15, and they were 130-pound kids. I'm not saying 2-on-1 is fair.
Right. Well, not with a baseball,
not with a knife,
a baseball bat and a knife.
Bat. I can see 2-on-1 with their fists, and they have a little fight, and it's fair. Then that to me that's fair.
Okay.
2 15-year-old 130-pounders fighting a 26-year-old 300-pounder. That's fair, but not with knives and baseball bats.
Right.
Yeah. That was just a premeditated crime in which they're still in jail. They're getting 20 years to life. These kids. They will get out because I think one of them did like a manslaughter.
Yeah.
So they're going to be out at some point. Hopefully not back to this community. We already got a murderer roaming around the streets shooting people.
More than one. That's horrible. And that's
and this is a nice community.
I was going to say, this
is 40,000 population. It's a nice middle class, upper middle class community.
You know what it's like? It's like when a few years ago, we did a story. I did a story at a paper that I worked for about murder rates going up in certain towns and blah, 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 blah. They were going from 1 to 2, 0 to 1, not a lot of murders. But I remember that year in Beverly, which is where I live, there were 2 or 3. Beverly was one of those towns.
And that's way too many.
That's a lot for a town.
2 or 3 is really, or a small bedroom type community, that's way too many.
Yeah.
Now, Chicago?
Whole different story.
Whole different story.
Population.
It has nothing to do with population. It's just maniac.
Well, there is a theory that once you go to a place where people don't know you, you're more likely to act violently or more act.
That's more of a cultural thing. That's just embedded in the culture over there.
What, the violence?
The violence, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right, fine. fine.
I'm not a sociologist, Dave, but I think it's common sense. It's just embedded in the culture.
I think it's embedded in the culture, but I also think when you're in a city, again, studies have shown if you're in a community where people know you, it's almost like it's a little more conscious.
Yeah,
you've got a little more.
There's a
conscience.
deterrent.
Right, but if you go to a New York City where you've got
it's very random, very impersonal. No one cares about you.
Right,
die in the gutter. They'll just walk right over your body.
They wouldn't walk over your. Well, some would, but others would stop and they would.
See if you got any money left in your wallet. That happened in Atlanta a few weeks ago. Random killing. People walk up to the guy. He's dead in the street after getting shot in the head, and they grab his wallet.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely.
I guess that makes a little sense. If you need the money, he didn't need the money anymore. All right, what's our third category?
Just a random murder. A random murder is one of those. Those are the scariest because the first two we talked about, people, they knew each other. There was some sort of a confrontation. Not that it's a rational thing to do, but you can sit there and look at it from both sides of the equation. Say, I can see how those nitwits thought what they were doing was right. But just a random murder where a young girl walking through a park, jogging through a park, was attacked from behind and choked to death by an 18-year-old kid.
Oof.
Let's back up a couple of years. I knew that 18-year-old kid.
Did you really?
I worked in Department of Youth Services. He was one of the kids in the Department of Youth Services. He was from the Worcester, Mass, or the Springfield, Massachusetts area. He was in for drug dealing. One thing about drug dealers, although they can be violent, drug dealers are like a really bad car salesman. They're very articulate, but they're very annoying. Yes, some of them are violent, but they're the type of criminal that kind of plays by a little bit of a code, meaning they're not rapists. They just want to sell their drugs. I know that they harm people and people die from the drugs, but the drug dealer kids that I dealt with were a lot easier to get along with. They were more personable. You wouldn't look at them necessarily and say, ooh, that's a criminal. Whereas you look at sex offenders, the rapists, you look at them, they're very creepy. They're very slimy looking. They're very scary. You don't even want to be next to them.
So this kid, how old was he when you knew him?
I probably met him when he was 14, and I met him on and off. He was in and out of the Department of Youth Services for a few years. What ultimately got him out of the Department of Youth Services? I think it was a Saturday. They pressed the alarm in the system in the place that I worked because this kid had walked up behind a female counselor and got her in a chokehold. He says he was just playing.
Yeah.
But he grabbed her from behind the neck and got her in a little chokehold. Like if you watch UFC or you watch wrestling, the old chokehold, they knock him out unconscious. He got her into that for about 10 seconds and she was coughing and a couple of kids pulled him off her.
Other DYS kids.
Some of those kids will back you up. Yeah. I wouldn't want them over at my house doing my lawn or coming over for a barbecue. But some of them, they have a little street code to them, and they will help out someone that they think is worthy. And they thought the girl was probably attractive, the counselor. So yeah, he got kicked out of that program probably within a year after that. And he just murdered the girl. He was in the park just hanging out. She went jogging by him. He came up from behind, choked her to death, raped her. He got caught. And then probably within a month after that, he hung himself in jail, which is for the better. Yeah. Because you don't want those people getting out.
Right. It actually is for the better. That's the case that I would say. And again, we've talked about this, the high rates of recidivism among pedophiles and rapists.
And especially that was just a random murder. It's like a thrill killing.
You know what it reminded me of? It reminded me, I think I told you this about, there was a case in Lynn where somebody going to the pet store to buy kittens. And he was strangling the kittens. And it's the gateway.
Well, the kitten population is kind of out of control. That's crazy.
Who said that? Del Lawrence? Was that? I just want to get that right.
That's crazy because obviously animal cruelty is a part of the homicidal triangle. Fire setting, bedwetting, and killing of animals.
Wait a minute. Wait. Let's go to bedwetting. Say it again.
Bedwetting is a part of lack of impulse control. You just sit there and piss. I'm not talking a 7-year-old bedwetting. I'm talking a 14 or 15-year-old just pissing his pants every night.
Really?
Lack of control.
That's really, so if you've got a kid who's a teenager.
You're at a cookout and they say, did you hear about little Jimmy over there? He just killed a cat. He pisses his pants and he's out there playing with matches.
Yeah.
That's a maniac, Dave. Don't let him date your daughter.
Wow.
Don't think you can help him, Dave.
I knew the fire thing and I know the thing about animals. I know the thing about animals. If you're cruel to animals, it can escalate into being cruel to people. If you start to kill animals, it's because you want to feel what it's like to kill. You're getting some sort of
they
thrill
practice
from it.
on animals.
Yeah.
They practice on animals.
I remember the gateway. It's a gateway.
Jeffrey Dahmer.
Did he used to?
Absolutely. He used to kill squirrels in the backyard.
But the bedwetting is something I didn't know.
Yeah, well.
What if you're like, if you're like a 19-year-old guy and you run into an 18-year-old girl and you have a little too much to drink and she pees herself?
Yeah, that's a different. I'm talking every night, Dave.
All right.
And in a few years, you'll be wetting your pants, Dave. But that's why they have Depends for adults.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm talking a 16, 17-year-old kid who just pisses his pants every night. He plays with matches and he walks up to cats and strangles them. That's a maniac.
I mean, this kid, we don't know which one of these this kid did, but he clearly was rehearsing or practicing or something
Absolutely,
on that counselor.
The place that I worked. Yep.
Horrible. Fourth category?
Fourth one. I'm going to have to be a little vague on this.
Okay.
Former standout athlete, all around good kid, articulate kid, good looking kid, well-mannered kid, just snaps and murders his mother, stabs her over 30 times and beats her to death with a hammer, just out of the blue. But when you look at the situation, prior to that, he was experiencing some mental health issues, hallucinations, depression, anger, lack of impulse control. He had a few law enforcement encounters. I dealt with him at one point during one of those encounters, and I knew the kid when he was a younger kid. He was a nice kid, like I said, very athletic kid, very polite kid. And when I dealt with him, completely out of his mind. Just complete 360. You don't even know that person. You look at their eyes and they're not even focused on reality.
Is that a PCP case or mental illness?
Mental illness case.
Okay.
Because absolutely, someone on PCP and someone having a complete psychotic breakdown, a lot of the mannerisms, a lot of the behaviors are very similar.
Yeah. One of the issues, of course, with mental health, a former counselor told me once that she said, one of the things about crazy is you don't see it until it shows up.
Absolutely.
And it's the poor mother. I mean, the poor kid, because I'm sure they put him on his meds. And
meds don't. People have this weird illusion that if you just put someone on meds, just put them on some meds, put them on some behavioral meds, some antipsychotic meds, some anti-hallucinogen meds, whatever the hell they have out there, that cures them. It doesn't cure people. It might cure a small percentage.
Does it treat them?
It might treat some people, but we're talking about criminally insane. We're talking about completely violent, off the rails type people.
Right.
No medication for them.
So
the only medication you have for them is a bullet to the head or just lock them in prison for the rest of their life. Now, that brings me to the punchline here, Dave.
Yeah.
This young man just got out of prison. That's why I want to tread lightly.
Yeah.
Because this is what my inside people have told me.
What's that?
That last summer, he was seen at a local beach in the community which he murdered his mother, seen at a local beach. And the people at that beach were horrified. People were leaving the beach. Kind of like Jaws in the water. It was a land shark out there. And people knew who he was because he got out 20 years later. And this was only a year ago. People were very afraid because his mother was a very, very popular family in that part of the community. They don't all go away for life.
What's a life sentence these days? 10 years?
Well, it's supposed to be at least 20.
Yeah. What is it? Do you know?
Well, if you get life, 20 to life, murder 1, murder 2. Yeah, murder 2, 20 years, you're going to probably get out in 20 years. That's what he did. He did murder 2, 20 years, and he did just about 20 years.
Yeah.
And they found that he was rehabilitated. He went to college. He was a nice kid. He made his bed every night. He was polite to the jail guards. They said, fuck it, let him go out and roll the dice on him. See if he doesn't do it again.
Well, what are they going to do? You can't lock somebody up forever if they're...
Well, if you're going to go by the laws, you're right. Those are the laws. That's what we agreed upon. And you're right. You can't lock everyone up forever. That's why you just have to have a gun on you all the time, Dave.
You don't think I could repel the bad guys with my personality?
That's the thing about it, Dave, is their personality a lot of times is so engaging. They're like the used car salesman or the car salesman. They put you at ease, whether it be a rapist, a murderer, or just someone trying to sell you something at the front door. They put you at ease. You like them. You trust them. You feel sorry for them. You drop your guard. And if they're going to do harm to you, the minute you drop your guard, the minute they see you relax, boom, they're right on you, brother.
Yeah.
So that's the thing about some criminals. They're very good at spotting other people's weaknesses. They prey on them, and then they attack.
So you're not going to give... This guy snaps and kills his mother.
Yep.
Obviously, not much to gain from that one. Crime of passion.
Crime of mental illness, possibly.
Right. Yeah. I mean, so you're not going to you're not going to say the kid went crazy, became a bad seed, and you're saying there was enough premeditation in this that they called it a murder and they sent him away for 20 years.
Yeah, I think that the only way to tell, Dave, put someone away, when they come out, just see what happens.
Ugh.
If, in fact, he does it again, then that was a bad choice by the parole board.
Yeah.
If he doesn't do it again and he lives the rest of his life, however long that may be, and doesn't victimize anyone, then say, you know something, that was one guy who just, due to a mental health illness, he snapped, and after that, he's been fine. But you're not going to know until something happens. Do you want to be the victim? Do you want your daughter to be the victim? Do you want your ex-wife to be the victim?
Not even my ex-wife.
Not even your ex-wife.
Not even my ex-wife. I don't want anyone to be the victim.
Yeah, no one wants anyone to be, just an innocent person to be a victim. Absolutely not.
I mean, outside of the idea of locking the door and throwing away the key on everybody, you know, how do we know? I mean, there's always
no one knows because there's 100 different opinions. You get the cop opinion, you get the court opinion, you get the medical opinion.
Does a cop ever agree with the court?
For the most part, they're on the same playing field for the most part. Where cops and courts disagree is when you bring the medical profession in there and the social work profession and the sociology profession and the psychology profession.
Right.
Those people love everyone. Everyone just had a bad day.
Yeah.
Give them a break. Put them on some meds. Put them in a room. Get them a college degree. Get them a trade. They'll be fine. They just need to feel loved.
I'll say this. I mean, the idea of somebody going to jail and getting a college degree, I think that's a good thing. I mean, I think it is a good thing.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, think about it. You're trying to start your life again. You're let's say you're 20 and you kill somebody and you don't get out till you're 40. You've basically kicked away your career. You've kicked away your retirement. You've kicked away your chance at a happy, quote unquote, happy life as the society defines happy life. And if you're mentally ill enough that you're going to kill your own mother, I mean, everyone's gotten every adolescent gets mad at their mother at some point.
Absolutely.
And I mean, that's just, you've suffered, I would think. And again, maybe something in the psychology here, you're going to say it shouldn't apply or doesn't apply. But you got to figure that somebody who does something like that over the course of 20 years, well, there's two things that's going to happen. They're either going to realize what a horrible mistake they made, and they're going to feel horrible about it and horrible about all the consequences, and their conscience is going to just torture them. Or they're going to go to jail and they're going to feel bad for themselves because I'm being punished the way a little kid is.
Yep,
a little kid will get mad, not about what they did, but
very
about
narcissistic. It's all about them. Look behind you, Dave. What does that say behind you? Look on the wall. There's a diploma. What does it say?
It says Boston University. Then there's a section for your name where it looks like you've used whiteout and then put your name over it.
Talking to the mic, they're not going to hear you. Yeah, it says Boston University master's degree cost me $30,000.
$30,000 for that forgery? For that forgery?
Got a bachelor's degree from Boston University. Killed his mother and got a free degree.
Your alma mater.
Yeah, that makes the school look bad.
Why? That's a very interesting thing. Why Boston University?
I guess they're contracted out with the state of Massachusetts. So I don't know why.
So if you were to send your kid, or if I was to send my kid there, it would cost us $30,000. You got a master's
for a master's. If you sent them there for a bachelor's degree, it's going to cost them $200,000, probably $50,000 a year.
I think it's yeah. I know people who would know this. We're hoping that my daughter does so poorly on her college boards.
She doesn't even get to school. Yeah,
she doesn't even get to school. We want her going. We're going to homeschool her for college.
Or a little advice. How about a little advice? If you don't have money for your kids to go to college, if your kid is up for it, randomly kill a homeless person, do 10 years in jail, get your bachelor's degree or master's degree.
Here's
it's free money, baby.
Here's what I'm thinking.
What?
Now you're mentioning this, white collar crime.
Yep.
She can commit
a white collar crime. Don't even have to kill anyone.
Crime. She goes into a nice facility. She can work on her tennis game, get a college degree.
Yeah.
5 years later, she gets out. She's got her bachelor's. She's got a master's. She's ready for life. They say to her, "What's this about a little thing on your resume?" And she just says, "That's how I paid for college."
Yep. Just say I was laundering all my father's money from his comedy business. I was laundering all that money for him.
That would be a misdemeanor. All right, what do we got for our fifth?
All right, here's the last one, the fifth one, and that's robbery. There is so many crimes out there that involve robberies gone bad, meaning people will just, I want to break into your house, steal your money.
Yeah.
and they shoot them or they stab them, whatever the case may be. They carjack them. Instead of just taking their car and driving down the street, they shoot them or they run them over. So I just picked up a couple right off the internet. And the first one is out of Tacoma, Washington. There was a group of kids, or I should say 2 kids, 16 and 15 years old. They were wanted for about 10 or so robberies of marijuana dispensaries.
Okay.
And in one of those robberies, they just randomly shot one of the workers there. And the 2 kids' names are Montrell Hatfield and Marshawn Jones, who was recently arrested, 15 years old.
Wow.
And the other kids, as of today, May 2nd, he's still on the run. But that was just random. They just went in there and they pulled out a gun and shot him. For no reason. No reason other than that they wanted to rob a place and wanted to get some marijuana or just get some money.
And this kid was probably this Jordan Brown.
Yeah, he's just working at
Just
a
working
regular
stiff.
job, working stiff. And the other one is a local one, a young high school kid, Weymouth High School, which is south of Boston, probably about 10 to 15 miles south of the city of Boston. Kid went to buy some weed. The kids who were going to sell him the weed decided to rip him off, little drug rip, and a altercation happened. There's a bunch of different stories here, but all we know is that one of the kids involved shot the kid, shot him in the leg, and the kid died. The kid's name is Nathan Paul, Weymouth High School student.
Horrible.
Horrible.
I mean, if they shot the kid in the leg, were they shooting him in the leg, or did they just miss him, or did they just think, well, we'll shoot him in the leg, he won't die?
It was probably a struggle. They were probably struggling for the drugs, struggling for the money.
Okay.
The kid pulled out a gun. They're struggling. He gets shot. One of the worst places to get shot, Dave, is in the leg because your femoral artery is there. And if you hit that, you're done. They must have hit his femoral artery and he bled to death within minutes. So, yeah, the accident, I didn't mean to shoot him. I didn't mean to run him over.
Right. We're right back to the I didn't know the gun was loaded defense.
Yeah. So, and the last people you ever trust is a criminal.
Yeah.
Because they're always going to sway the story in their favor. But now you have a kid dead just looking to buy some weed.
Man. And this was the kid, this kid Nathan Paul was the buyer.
He was the buyer, just a normal high school kid. And like I said, those stories can go on forever and ever and ever. And some of the times, and I want to give a kind of a shout out to a lot of the cops out there who are paramedics. A lot of the cops who are very good at rendering first aid. And the difference between a lot of these murders and shootings and stabbings on the street that turn into murder, a lot of times when it doesn't turn into murder, when the person doesn't die, when the victim doesn't die, it's great medical care that the paramedics or the cops on scene gave. And I used to work with a couple of guys who were paramedics and a couple of guys who were great medical providers on calls, on whether it be on stabbings or car accidents or overdoses. Those are the guys you want on the call with you.
I mean, anybody who's got skills to change the result. I mean,
absolutely, and that's what it is. A lot of times, it's just the medical care on scene that determines whether it's a homicide or maybe just a shooting, which the person doesn't die.
It's amazing.
So there you go, Dave. If you're going to go do a robbery, make sure the buddy you're with is like a paramedic. So when you shoot someone or you get shot, he can help you out.
Okay.
There you go.
All right. What if he runs away?
He runs away, then you're all done.
Why is it going to be a he? Why couldn't I go?
It could be a nice girl, Dave.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, Bonnie
girl.
and Clyde.
Yeah. Let me ask you this question. You know the society we're in. You know the whole Bonnie and Clyde thing. You know the glorification of violence in the American society. I'm sure you had this when you were getting your master's degree in criminal. What's it for?
Criminal justice. Boston University, worth nothing. Want to know why it's even worth less now?
I know why.
You ever heard of AOC?
I know why.
The congresswoman from New York?
Listen,
that degree's worth nothing.
Here's the problem with this degree first of all, obviously, it's not yours. You just had it printed up. Secondly, if you did actually earn it, we know that your wife, like most cops, your wife probably did your homework for you.
My wife's sister. She's a journalism student just like you were.
There you go. So AOC has wasted it's terrible.
That degree's worth nothing
AOC, who just does nothing all day but argue on Twitter with
that's her alma mater.
Old white men.
You got her and you got a murderer who just made that degree worthless.
Who's the murderer?
The kid who murdered his mother?
He was a BU guy?
10 minutes ago, we were talking about him, how he went to prison and got his degree.
I'm sorry, I don't listen.
Oh, my God, Dave.
I don't listen.
Someone called 911. I got an Alzheimer's patient that just left the ward. All right.
Anyway,
that's about it, Dave. Very pleasant talk we had today.
This is great. We should do this all the time. You know what the best thing about this was?
What?
No Nathan.
Well, see, I wanted Nathan, but he's out writing comedy.
He tells you he's out writing
Well,
comedy.
his boss says, if you don't write any better jokes, kid, you ain't working for me anymore.
Is that what his boss said?
Something like that.
Yeah, he's a very talented kid. That kid. Anyway, enough about that. Let's move it on to we all well done.
And it's a wrap, Dave.
This was
it's a
good.
wrap. We started late today.
You know a lot of murderers.
Unfortunately, I do. Unfortunately, it's not a good thing.
You know what's funny about
They're very
this?
scary.
All of the stories, you get these three. How many? Three or was it four? Four horrible stories. And you know what the common denominator for all of these criminals was?
What's that?
They all knew you.
I knew them all. I knew every single one of them.
I know.
I knew their parents.
You
every
knew
one of them.
You probably knew them in their formative years.
Absolutely, I did.
Maybe you're a chase.
Maybe I could be that missing link.
Anyway, this has been Inside the Line, Real Stories by Real Cops. I'm Dave Rattigan. Across from me is that Dale Lawrence. If you like us, please share us. We're trying to build our audience. And we'll be back to talk about more gross stuff next week. Crime and grime is our life.
Make sure you lock your doors because there's two murderers walking the streets of the community that I live in right now.